All right, everybody. How's it going? Welcome to Coalition Tech Talks. Name is still pending. We got a couple of topics to go over today. We'll be talking about AIO cooling versus full custom loop, as well as things like PlayStation 4, PlayStation Now, Microsoft, the Xbox Scorpio convergence, Zen through AMD, and keeping along with AMD, we're also going to be talking about how they're stealing market share back from NVIDIA. But let's get to the top of the list right now, and let's talk about AIO versus custom water loop, because if you've been keeping up with the Coalition's channels, then you'll notice that this is the computer that we did our video on recently, where we did full AIO for CPU and GPU. And if you've been keeping up with Homebrew and his work, this is his full custom water loop solution. So I'll let Chris over here, because this is Chris, aka Homebrew, and I'm Chris, aka Hellgaden, and we'll have him talk about his loop.
All right. So my build is a i7 2700K. It's overclocked to 4.6 gigahertz, running at 1.5 volts. That's right, 1.5 volts. The graphics card is also overclocked. It is running at a boost clock of, I have it right here. Let me see here. A boost clock of 1700 megahertz tops, and then the RAM is at, I can't remember off the top of my head. I want to say it's like 3500 megahertz, something like that. Everything is running through an EK PE360 radiator. I've got a EK Revo D5 pump PWM, EK Supremacy block, and then that's nickel and plexi. And the same thing goes for the GPU. The GPU is a 970, like I said, but it also has the matching backplate and the full cover nickel block. It runs fantastically. The fans are 3 Noctua NFF12 industrial fans, so they're the waterproof rated. They're black. That's kind of the reason I got them, is because they're black. Even though they're IP67 rated, I don't really care. Other than that, the tubing is 3/8 by 5/8, XSPC fittings all the way around. I've got a ball valve down here and a drain, so I have a lot of components in here to kind of keep the loop running smoothly when I need to do my maintenance. Other than that, my temps are stable. My max temp under full load is 66 degrees on one core. Now the average across all the cores was 62 degrees, but the hottest one core got was 66, and that's to be expected with the 2700Ks. You're not going to have equal temperatures across the processor,
Especially at 1.5 volts.
Yeah, at 1.5 volts,
that.
one of them's going to hit hot all the time. Other than that, GPU max temp, it never goes above 42 degrees Celsius. So that's kind of what you can expect from a 360 radiator running everything through one radiator with one pump. Now, Chris's build's a little different. He has 2 all-in-one coolers, and I'll let him talk about that and kind of showcase what he's got going on.
We'll talk about that, but real quick, as an aside, we're out here today at Chris's house in his patio, so if you hear a lot of miscellaneous sounds like dogs barking or saws going off or things like that, that's just the nature of what we're doing. So
I promise you no one is getting killed. There's no butchering going on in the back, I promise.
But I saw him put all the plastic up.
Shh! They're not supposed to know that.
Anyway, so here's my build. It's got an i7 3770K. I'm currently running it at stock temps, but we're going to be changing that pretty soon.
Stock clocks.
Stock clocks, correct. Sorry.
Stock clocks.
And the graphics card is an EVGA 970 for the Win Plus edition. That is a custom PCB and introduces its own issues that we'll get to. Currently cooled by a Corsair H55, and we got an OCZ Mod Extreme 700 watt power supply. I got 8 gigs of RAM. Going to be upgrading to 16 gigs soon. It's DDR3 1600. That's at stock right now. And the case is a Deep Cool DuCase V2. Real cool thing about the DuCase is you can take the top off. You can inspect your radiator, clean it out, whatever. There's some miscellaneous sounds you can hear probably. Got a door on the front. Got an intake fan in this area here. It's got a filter on it. My setup is actually a bit of a negative pressure system, so filters are good at the moment.
Sounds like he's back there cutting the handcuffs off Uncle Jimmy. That's what it sounds like.
Uncle Jimmy, no.
Yeah, exactly.
So Interesting things that we ran into when we were working on this.
You should watch the build log of this, by the way, for the GPU. If you haven't watched it, please go watch that.
It's on the Coalition Gaming YouTube channel. And it still doesn't really get into the nitty-gritty about how difficult it was.
That could have been like an hour-long video.
Yeah, it could have been pretty bad. But currently my temps are very appreciative of all the work, and I'm appreciative of this guy for helping me out. So the CPU with the fans on max running Prime 95 version 26.6 for reasons I don't want to get into right now. They probably got into the mid to low 60s on average, which on air with my Hyper 212 Plus that I had before that, I was in the mid 70s range. So it is a pretty good improvement. Didn't blow me out of the water, but wasn't expecting it. It's an AIO solution, not a full custom loop like this guy. It was only $90 too, but it came with some really good fans. That's the 240EX.
We're not going to talk about money on that.
Yeah, yeah. It's a Deep Cool Captain 240EX AIO cooler on the CPU, and that EX is really nice because those fans, they're $50 fans if you try to buy them individually, but they do they can push a lot of air. They got a pretty good static pressure. He can talk a little bit more about static pressure on the fans, but his review of my fans is actually pretty positive. So.
They're pretty powerful. Their pressure beats the revered NFF12s. So, as far as pressure goes, those things will push. They are noisier, make a lot more noise, but they do push a ton of air. Now, the thing is with your cooler, though, that's the updated version, right? So it has the sleeving around the coolant lines. Yes, it's not the corrugated.
If you guys look for miscellaneous reviews on the Captain 240, you'll see ones that have red fans. And those ones with the red fans, that's the old model. Those fans don't push as much air, and they're also louder. They come with, like, corrugated plastic-looking tubes.
Garbage.
Yeah, they're sticking points in some people's reviews online. This one is like a braided tubing. Braided rubber? Is that braided
it's
over
like
the rubber lines?
It's like fuel lines on a car. So it's rubber cord, and then it has nylon wrapper on the outside. Okay. So it's like a high pressure line is kind of what it looks like.
But it's a better look, and it's a higher quality line. So that they definitely listen to some of the people's complaints to put on better fans and better tubing. Pump is the same, but that really wasn't the problem before. So
that's another thing. A lot of people argue that your pump makes a world of difference. If you can hit your target, your pump speed really doesn't matter as long as you're getting adequate flow. So if you have a really restrictive loop, you want a more powerful pump to push through the resistance, but really the all-in-one coolers pumps are adequate for what they're designed for. So that takes some of the guesswork out of it. Whereas this, with the resistance I have in the blocks for both and the radiator, I needed to get a more powerful pump. That's why I went with the D5. Whereas in his case, he just needed to get the parts and put it together, and there was no guesswork really. It was just kind of, this is what I'm getting, and it's going to work.
Speaking of guesswork, though, when it comes to that, the guesswork was a factor when trying to get this NZXT Kraken G10 bracket on my GPU. And man, was it something else. So the total cost for my system, I know you didn't want to talk about cost, but we have to bring it up because people are going to be wondering about this. Total cost of this, of getting the cooling system, I'm not going to include in the case because half the time it will already work in a case, but yeah, maybe I will. I'll just
except your old case.
Yeah, not my old Silverstone. Let's see. The total cost was $250. That is including the case. The case was $50, so I could have got away with full cooling of a 240 millimeter radiator and a 120 millimeter radiator, which equals $360, which is over there, for $200. And that's pretty unheard of in the water cooling, as far as like if you wanted to do a custom loop, you can do like a semi-custom setup with the Swift Tech, but then you want to add a graphics card block to that, and then the tubing and the clamps and things that go with that, then you're going to go over that easily.
And you're at the limit for that Swift Tech pump doing that.
Yeah.
So,
And really the EK Predator is the same way, and that's even more expensive than the Swift Tech setup.
Yeah.
So
the nice thing, though, is the EK will sell you a water block with tubing already pre-primed and ready to go to the quick disconnects on the Predator. That's kind of cool.
But not for my graphics card.
Not for your card, because your card is the exception. My G1, water blocks all day long. His card, they tell him, no, sorry.
The closest thing you can get for an EVGA 970 for the Win Plus was an Alpha Cool that looked like a full block, but it's really just a block for the GPU die, but it had like the water passing through it and fins and stuff that it would passively cool the rest of the card, but it wasn't a full a full block solution. It was just basically like a really nice universal block.
Yep. And you were saying your total cost with the crack in everything was what, $200?
$200. $200 with the case, $250.
Yeah.
Yeah. If your case could handle all
Let's
this.
take the case out and do it in apples to apples. What did just the components cost?
$200.
So that's not including the case.
That's not including the case.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's gonna. Everybody might cringe. He might cringe, but this is his dream. When you want to build what you want to build.
And how long have I been talking about this?
A very long time.
Yeah.
But when you want to build what you want to build, as long as you got the money, it's really not that big a deal.
Yeah. This setup, all said and done, coolant tubing, everything. I want to say it was like $650 for everything. So yeah, it's 3 times the money, but just look at it. I mean, it's freaking gorgeous.
Oh yeah, I definitely would rather look at that than this. Not that this is hard to look at.
And the numbers don't lie though, because his temps are really good for stock clocks. Now we haven't seen what that cooler will do overclocked. So when we start pushing it, then that'll be the kind of thing is like if you're looking to just have air or water cooling to have a silent PC and you're not overclocking, that's going to be the better way to go. But if you're pushing as big of overclocks as I've got, you're going to want to go with the custom loop 9 times out of 10. Guaranteed. I mean, there's going to be the outliers, but that's going to be the best way to go.
However, your CPU overclock is still the same as it was with an H100.
And the H100 hit what?
I don't remember.
89 degrees.
Oh, shoot.
That's 9 degrees away from thermal threshold. Yeah. And
I wouldn't even be comfortable with that.
No, that's why I rolled the clock back. That's why I rolled it down to 4.5 and lowered the voltage because it was too much. I just, and that thing was full tilt, super noisy. These fans never go above 75%, and it's just dead silent.
Yeah, well, so there's definitely some drawbacks to this setup and definitely advantages to that one.
But there's advantages to that. The impact on your wallet's the biggest one.
Definitely. Yeah. When it costs 3 times as much, it better perform as good as that does.
Yeah.
And this one, it performs well for what it is. So let me talk about the temps real quick. Did I already talk about the temps? Did I say that on the CPU, on the GPU?
Not on the GPU.
No,
you talked about the CPU.
CPU. Okay, so the GPU temps, after all was said and done with the H55, my old idle temps, not that idle temps matter too much, but it's just a factor for talking about. The old idle temps were mid-40s after I switched into this case. It was a little higher than that in my old case. This case, it was a little nicer.
And that's for the GPU, right?
That's for the GPU. And new idle temps, I've seen that idle as low as 28 degrees Celsius to maybe up to 31, depending.
Depending on your ambient temperatures, obviously, yeah.
And under load, and that was running Valley for probably about 40 minutes. 55, 56 was the highest I saw. Previous to that, just gaming. This isn't even a stress test. Just gaming, I'd get up to 74, 75, 76.
On the ACX2, right?
On the stock ACX 2.0 cooler EVGA included with that card. That's, what, a 20-plus degree difference.
Yeah. And you're going to get that when you have something that's actively drawing heat away and disposing of it outside the case. Because the way those ACX coolers work is it basically recirculates inside the case. Even though you're exhausting air out of the case, it's basically blowing air out, and you're just kind of circulating hot air around itself until it can get to one of your exhausts. So the water cooling is going to basically take all of your heat, put it to the radiator, and just dump it. So you're going to get better temps.
But coming back around to this specific card with this bracket, that one of the advantages that he had was this stuff was made for it. You just install it and it's good to go. There isn't any guesswork there. The guesswork here was this NZXT bracket is designed for more reference style cards with reference mounting points, none of which this graphics card has.
Well, it has them. They're just buried underneath backplates.
None of which it's
easily
set
accessible.
Up for. Yeah. So the backplate had to come off. We had to drill new holes in the backplate in order to line up the holes properly. It took us 3 attempts just to get to the holes to the right spot.
It felt like it was 6. It was probably 3, but it felt like we were at it for a while.
3 with the drill and 3 with the
reamer.
With the reamer.
Yeah, we were at it a while.
Yeah, so that makes sense.
That video could have easily turned into an hour-long video, and I had to whittle it down. I'm like, we just need pertinent information.
Then I got confused on how the mount works because of how I had the graphics card out. So I had the mount upside down, and then we installed it that way, and then we had to uninstall it, and we flip it around and put it back on the correct way.
And we put it over the PCI slot.
Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah. But really, it was the drilling that was the curveball for us, wasn't it?
Honestly, putting it on backwards is something that
That could happen. That could happen whether whether it was a custom board or not, whether
Yeah.
you're good at computers or not. It's just because when the way the graphics card sits in the computer half the time is not how it is when you look at it.
Right, because when you're working on it, typically when you have the die up, looking at the die, it's upside down. So in your head, you're like, oh, it goes in the case like this, but you don't associate now that you have no cooler on it. There's no frame of reference.
So unless you're very creative, please be sure that if you order a Kraken G10 bracket for your graphics card, be sure that you at least use a reference style board. And if it's a custom PCB, at least see if you can find out if other people have installed it with no issues because of how it uses the reference holes on the PCB. The non-reference cooler on this use holes that were they're closer in, right?
Farther out.
Okay, they're
Well,
farther
your stock one is closer in, but the ones that the Kraken uses
Right.
are farther out.
Yes.
Yeah, correct.
No, it was the other way around.
No.
The stock cooler was farther out.
The stock cooler was closer in. When you look at it, the stock cooler was probably
Whatever the case is, they were different.
50 millimeter corner to corner. The ones that we actually used to put it in were probably 65, 70 millimeter.
Yeah.
They were farther across.
Yeah, so there's some research that needs to be done. But I had seen posts online that people put this on their 970 for the Win Plus, but probably what they did is they took all the plates off.
Yeah.
And the goal here was to keep the back plate on
And
the mid plate on, and that was more important than even keeping the back plate on because the mid plate, the way that the stuff is arranged on the board, the mid plate passively cools the VRMs and the VRAM. Taking the mid plate off, you lose that, and you would have to put on little heat sinks. And if you look around online, you see that people have done it that way with little heat sinks. We didn't want to do that. I want to get into overclocking this at some point, and I'm going to need any additional cooling I can get.
And that was the original discussion, though, is you were going to put those heat spreaders on the VRM and on the chips, and I did not like that idea one.
It would have looked a little... That would have been too janky.
It would have been...
No, now it's just Frankenstein, but...
Yeah, it's not as janky. The copper-colored heat spreaders stuck with thermal pads and thermal paste would have been... you don't move that machine around too much because you're going to start dropping little pieces of copper. It's just not a pretty sight.
Well, then it just sucks that nobody made a custom water block because I could have considered... I was close to maybe considering a SwiftTech setup and adding the graphics card into it. But no water block, not happening.
That's your own fault. It's your own fault for buying that card.
I got this car for $100, by the way, and it was because it was.
Wow, that's a good deal.
It was through a deal from a friend that he happened to have an extra, and he didn't care about price. He just said that seems fair, $100, go for it, as long as it goes to a good home. I couldn't pick and choose the card.
No, my brother-in-law also has that card, and it's a great card. If any of you are thinking about water cooling it, though, I have bad news for you. Again, you're stuck with that or the Alpha Cool block. EK is like, nope, don't care, unless you buy a Chinese one off of eBay and you take a gamble.
I didn't think there was even any Chinese full blocks for that card.
Oh, there are.
No,
and
they're
universals. They're $30, $40. Would you trust a piece of...
No, they probably don't even have fins inside or anything like that.
No, they do.
No,
they do. I've looked at them. They look like an EK ripoff, but they fit all the different cards. It's I wouldn't risk, retail value a $300 card at the time with a $30 water block.
And now the problem is nobody's going to be buying 970s now, especially with the 1060 hanging around.
But a lot of this applies to any aftermarket card because your reference cards, like the actual NVIDIA, all the 480s. Are there any aftermarket ones out? Any card partner ones yet?
For the water blocks?
No, for the card, for the 480, for the RX 480s.
They're starting to trickle out.
But most of the NVIDIA always comes to market before. ATI with the graphics cards for partner
that
cards.
could be true, but then the 470 launched with partner cards first, and that's only all that's available for it.
I know.
So they kind of flip-flop their technique.
It's a tricky thing, but that's something to keep in mind when you're buying a water block or thinking about water cooling. Buy a reference series card. I mean, unless you know for certain that there's a water block available, buy a reference card because everybody's going to build a water block for the reference cards first because they typically come out first. Yeah. And then when you have custom designed PCBs like my card, his card, I got lucky. The G1 had a water block. He didn't get lucky. His card doesn't have it. So
this was essentially what I was stuck with as far as getting a good cooling solution, and it all worked out in the end.
So would you do it again if you had unlimited money? This is where it comes down to performance per dollar. Would you do it that way, or would you do this?
The whole reason I did it is because I don't have unlimited money.
Let's assume it was a perfect world and you made $100,000, $200,000 a year. Would you have done that or this?
I would have done a full loop.
Why?
Because I like how it looks better.
Okay. So, but
the performance would have been better too.
But we'll see how that performs though, because if you are on a budget, that might be the better bet. I mean, when he approached me with this idea, I'll be honest, I was kind of against doing 2 different coolers. I was a big proponent of do the SwiftTech, do the Alpha Cool block, call it a day.
But there are plenty of people that do 2 custom loops as well. They do one loop for the GPU and one loop for the CPU. And it's really no different than that.
No, I know.
In terms of how many loops do you put in your computer?
And any of you people out there watching this that are water cooling nuts, and you say you should never run 2 components in one loop, this is proof that it can be done. You don't need 2 separate radiators and 2 pumps and 2. You don't need that. This works just fine. I'm looking at you.
Yeah, so I do recommend this setup if you're on a budget. The temps are good.
They're actually really good.
Yeah,
they're really good. I'm not gonna lie. They're really good. His idle temps on the GPU. That's what I'm getting on here with the overclock, and that's on stock clocks. And his stock clocks are within a shout of mine. We'll put some information, and I've got slides to show you overlaid, but we'll put some information in to actually show you his speeds with the breakdowns and temps and everything like that, so you can see an apples to apples comparison.
Yeah, but definitely for the money, a solution similar to this is just great. You'll be happy with it. If you're aspiring to do that and you want to use this as a stopgap measure, stop right there. Save your money.
Yeah, don't waste $200.
Keep saving money. It's not a
waste. Well,
but,
you didn't waste, but if someone's going to go to this, that would not be a
right,
good,
because you just the $200 could be better used saving.
Another thing,
but it's good if that's all you got.
Right.
You're going to be really happy with the results.
And it just shows the difference in builds. Like his, this, like we said earlier, this was a long time coming. I think I got this processor and motherboard 5 years ago.
Yeah.
About 5 years ago, and you got yours about 4 because yours was
the
the
next.
After that. Yeah, so yours was the next deal. Yeah. So this is 5 years in the build process, and I've got all the cabling sleeved. I did that. I didn't buy it. I did it.
Well, as far as your water cooling aspirations, those were 5 years in the making.
Those were 5 years because remember,
and this is 5 weeks in the making.
I know. Yeah, I talked about this with him when we were both employed at Geek Squad. Shame on that place, but we were both employed there, and we talked about this for a long time. We talked about water cooling, air cooling, and the merits of both. And we had a manager who had experience with water cooling, and he just had bad experience. Adam, remember? We asked Adam, would you ever do a water cooled loop again, a custom loop? And he said, absolutely not. I don't understand why. Maybe back 5 years ago, the manufacturing tolerances weren't there and there were leaking problems. I've taken this to a LAN party now and moved it around, and I've had nothing but good things to say about it.
What I've heard, if you got the right clamps, you got everything set up right, you can move it around. It's all sealed up. What's gonna happen?
Yeah. Don't use barbed fittings for soft lines. Use compression fittings. That's a big thing. I think if you're using barbed fittings and you're moving it around,
clamps, but I mean the compression line. They clamp to just screw them on, right?
Yeah, the way the compression fitting is, it's a hybrid barb. So you have the barbed fitting that goes to the card or to the component, and then you have a compression ring with an O-ring that cinches down on the soft tubing.
So very good there.
All right, we're back after maybe a short ad break. We had some technical difficulties, but we're going to talk about Zen.
We're going to call that an ad break.
It's an ad break. Why not? Yeah, the camera had no problems. No. Okay. So Zen.
Okay.
We talked a little bit about it. My mom chimed in and said what she had to say about building her first computer. So your old build AMD.
I'm an original AMD guy as far as getting a custom computer built. My first one was an AMD setup. It was a Athlon 2500 Barton core, and man, those guys they're good processors. But back then it was super tricky to put a cooler on. You had to use a long screwdriver. You had to get the torque on it because you're right on the die. None of this heat spreader stuff, and you just had to pray and pray as you reached over and clipped it in. If you heard a crack, you probably just broke your die.
We've kind of gone backwards though, because that's a trend now, is delitting it to go straight to the die on the Intel stuff.
Well, then they delit it, then just to put thermal paste on and put it back on. So you're still doing it with a.
No.
The ones that I've seen is they put it back.
No, you haven't seen those motherboards. They Gigabyte makes one, Asus makes one. I think all the big board manufacturers make it, but it literally has an option where you swap out the lockdown to where it doesn't hold down the die cap, and you can mount a cooler directly to the die.
Well, as with the GPU and the AIO1, it works. With the AIO1, and it's just more effective that way.
That was a bottle cap.
So then my computer after that was an AMD K62 500 megahertz.
Yep.
First computer my parents bought us. My family was a Intel. That was an Intel system, but it was Intel Pentium MMX 233. I would still be on AMD today if they just managed to keep up better, especially for gaming. Back the heyday of AMD was the Barton core, Thoroughbred, that era. and into the dual cores, the X2s and the 64-bit. Man, they were stomping on Intel back then. And they've been the Prescotts, the Pentium 4s, the Pentium 3s, press hots. But they lost that lead very quickly when Core came out for Intel, and I basically had to switch to Intel because I had to. So
and you and I both got deals on Intel boards.
Yeah, well, they weren't giving deals on AMD boards and AMD gear, so whatever. No. But so that's where I'm at. This is hardcore Intel guy from day one. It sounds like
it's true. It's true.
So our perspectives are a little different when it comes to Zen, but in the end, with Zen and Summit Ridge and what they're going to do with the processors, it's going to be a lot of value for the money, assuming that AMD prices them right.
Yeah, so that's the biggest thing. If they price them right, you're going to have, better bang for your buck. You're going to be able to get something that competes with the Broadwell E. And based on everything we've seen right now, the current benchmarks that they're showing with Blender, it's 2% faster than a downclocked Broadwell E.
Yeah, well, downclock to match the same clock of the enginering sample of the
to give
Zen one.
To give it an apples to apples comparison.
Right. So, but that just means that AMD has a lot of work to do.
Yes, a lot of work to
get that frequency up, so they can compete. Because even when they come out, they're still going to be a few steps behind.
Right.
They're just going to be a few steps behind, but still be a perfectly viable competitor, perfectly viable alternative.
Oh yeah.
But they have to price it right to do that.
Right.
The interesting thing is AMD's main consumer processor is likely going to be an 8-core 16-thread.
Right.
Whereas if you turn the tables and look at how much an 8-core 16-thread Intel costs, you're looking
Don't look that up.
Yeah. It's 4 or 5 times the cost.
Yeah.
So when it comes to building a good computer for production of any kind, that's going to be a good processor setup to go with. And AMD is going to keep scaling up, because even though they got away from cluster multi-threading, that was an FX stuff, they're still doing it with modules.
Right.
So modules, in a sense, you can call them clusters, and they can keep adding them as long as it will fit on the die.
Yep.
So their server boards are going to be 32-core, 64 threads.
Yeah. It's like a Xeon, man.
And yeah, but probably way less expensive.
Oh yeah.
And you can't cut down the unit any further than 4 cores, as far as we've been able to find out.
The Zen, everything we've seen on Zen comes in 4-core, 8-thread.
Your basic 4-core, 8-thread Zen processor is going to be at the level of an i7.
Yep, absolutely.
And you all know how much an i7 costs. That's probably going to be in their 4-core is probably going to be like a $200 processor.
Is that what your vote is? You're thinking $200? So we're gonna make a little coalition bet. We're gonna see whose price is accurate when they drop the processors. We're gonna see who comes closest. What's your bet?
Well, the
for a 4-core 8-thread Zen,
$200.
$200?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say 300. So we're gonna see who comes in closer. We're gonna do an updated video to this at another Tech Talk. We're gonna see who gets in closer. But
man, they're committing suicide if they
even then
the same as an i7.
How you say i7, but that's on par with an i5 Skylake, 3.5 gigahertz. Because our friend Matt, Way Fast Whitey in the coalition, actually just built a new machine. It's an i5 4-core 8-thread.
No,
isn't his?
i5s do not hyperthread.
Oh, so it's 4-core 4-thread. How much was it?
That processor, he got it for $203 at Micro Center. There were some discounts that he got, deals with getting a motherboard and other stuff there. Okay. So you can get i5s in that $200 range, but they're not hyper-threading. That's why people consider it the gaming version of the i7.
Gotcha.
For games that don't use more than 4 cores, it gives the exact same results as far as benchmarks and stuff.
I still say 300. For their flagship, for their 4-core.
No, the flagship is going to be the 8-core 16-thread.
You think so?
Yes.
I'm thinking
they're going to come in with an 8-core 16-thread as their i7 killer, or i7 alternative.
I was going to say not killer, because they're still 2 generations back.
As far as performance goes, yeah. But they're going to have the 4-core 8-thread as their i5 competitor.
Yeah.
It just has to be that way, in my opinion.
But at the price point, at $300, you get hyper-threading. Assuming the boards are cheaper, I think $300 is going to be where the money's at.
But yeah,
$200 is going to be way more competitive though, because if you can price it cheaper than an i5, a current gen Skylake, and you're going to get more power, why not? More performance, I should say. Yeah.
Yeah, especially if you get into stuff that is going to require all the extra threads.
So what are some issues you have with Zen right now? Some things that you've seen that maybe you don't like, maybe some things you do.
I really feel that they're not moving fast enough with it. Okay. Zen can't come soon enough. AMD has been touting Zen like crazy, releasing PR after PR, get an interest in it as high as possible. But a side effect of that is actually more like a goal of that is to raise their shareholder, rather their stock prices.
Yep.
There is a guy at work that I know who does investments, Ivan. We both know him. He worked at Geek Squad with us.
Yep.
And I told him buy Zen when they were low. They were about like, I don't know, $2 a share or so. Not buy Zen, buy AMD.
By AMD. We knew what he meant.
Yeah.
He's not drinking either, which is funny.
So he didn't, but ever since then, their stock has been increasing.
Yeah,
So
and it'll continue to increase. So that's a coalition stock trading tip right there. Screw Scott Trade.
Yeah, unless they come in and overprice their processors.
Yeah, if they come in at $400, then yeah, it's going to plummet. It's going to be like Xerox stock.
Yeah, what are your problems with Zen?
My problem with Zen, honestly, I don't like the fact that the USB controller is integrated into the chip. It's something that to me could make the chip will still cost the same regardless. It's not going to change. So my estimate of $300, that's not going to go anywhere. If he's right at $200, that's still fine. That's still a good price. The thing I'm worried about is the board manufacturing cost, because now you no longer have an offloaded USB controller onto a Northbridge. So now you have to deal with running more silicon and getting it to where it needs to go to run it to the board. So that's something that remains to be seen. Also, we're dealing with engineering samples for all the benchmarks we've seen, so we'll see what the real world stuff is. But
real world specs hopefully come out better.
People are drinking the Kool-Aid real hard on this, and rightfully so, because it's a big thing to celebrate for AMD. I mean, they're doing it big. But I'm gonna reserve the hype train until we actually see what's going on when it comes out.
Yeah. But then again, budget board makers can just say, screw that integrated USB controller. We'll put our own on the board.
That's true.
I mean, AMD's not Intel. They're not gonna clamp down on the board makers and be like, you can't do that.
The clamps.
Yeah. Intel, and they clamped down on those people that were the motherboard makers that were making boards that could overclock non-K processors.
Yeah, I remember that. Because if I remember right, this was way a while back, but when the 8800 GT was out from NVIDIA, Best Buy sold that gateway with the Q6600 Core 2 Quad, and you could overclock it factory in the BIOS, and that wasn't like an unlocked processor. It was just like a Melee manufactured Q6600. It wasn't even a QX. And I remember that, and I was like, wow.
Q6600 was overclockable. Just
Right.
The big deal is that most companies that do computers, that big box stores like HP and stuff like that, they don't release BIOSes that can do overclocking.
And when I say overclock, I mean it was a small overclock. Nothing that's going to void the warranty or burn out the processor.
Yeah, well, I mean, the easiest thing to do with those processors back then was change your front side bus to 1333.
Screaming.
And adjust voltage to where it's stable. Sometimes it would be stable stock voltage is stable enough at that, and your instant 3 gigahertz 1333 front side bus.
Yep.
And that's it.
Yep. All right, on to PlayStation Now.
You want to switch it up to keep it with AMD?
You know what? We're gonna do that.
Yeah.
Screw the format that I wrote out. I'm just gonna go ahead. We're just gonna do this live. No,
we're doing it live.
We're doing it live.
No, we'll just draw the lines around there on your sheet there.
All right. So the next part,
AMD being pretty good about pricing their stuff, and everybody always saying that AMD is the cost alternative to Intel. Well, at this point they're not the performance alternative, but they're the cost alternative. Hopefully, eventually they'll be both. They are the cost alternative to NVIDIA, and it's been paying off for them. They've taken away market share from NVIDIA in their graphics card department with the Radeons.
Yep.
4 quarters in a row, and it's really kicked off, I think, with the 6000 series of the graphics cards.
Well, the one thing that we talked about this a little bit earlier, but the one thing that just dawned on me is what portion of this do we have to accommodate for, cryptocurrency? Because cryptocurrency has pretty much been an AMD exclusive thing. And a year ago, it was still pretty popular.
People mining, I think, make up such a small percentage.
But they don't buy one card. Like, look at our friend Louis. How many cards is that guy running with his multiple mining rigs? I mean...
See, but here's the thing is, like, that is... Rigs and mining have...
You can buy, like, the Butterfly or whatever is an all-in-one mining rig ready to go.
Right. See, that makes sense. That's fine. But to do your own at home, especially if you pay for your own electricity and you don't have any alternative setups to keep your costs down, the cost, the price, what you're getting versus how much it all costs has basically been negated.
Yeah.
So, mining stuff artificially raised prices for AMD cards for a while.
Yeah.
But now with the RX 480 and
those 290s, man, those 290s for a while they were expensive because of the mining. They were not cheap.
But it's kind of fallen off. So they're back to where everything makes sense. the RX 480 ends up hitting that, and all of the Polaris cards essentially, they hit that price alternative and performance alternative to the NVIDIA cards, and NVIDIA is trying really hard to stifle that, but you get less VRAM at the same price points. It might be a little more performance, but VRAM has gotten much more important lately in games versus before.
Mm-hmm.
As an example, my little brother has a 562 gigabyte card, and one of my other friends has a 561 gigabyte card.
Dang, I didn't even know they made those in 1 gig.
The 2 gig is actually the hard one to find.
Really?
They're all mainly 1 gig.
Jeez.
So one of them can play Siege, and one of them can't, because Siege for some reason uses a ton of VRAM. And
yeah, which is weird because it doesn't have a lot of texture.
Right.
Like you would think for a game like Siege, it really wouldn't take much.
Even with the Ultra HD texture pack, it still doesn't look incredibly different.
Nah.
Whatever the case is, it uses a lot of VRAM. So the bottleneck or the issue there with the 561 gig card on one friend's computer is it makes the games laggy, almost unplayable because of how things have to load and the VRAM constantly running out. Whereas the 2 gig 560, everything runs fine on low, smooth, no problems.
Yep.
So one guy with the old setup can do it, and one guy with the old setup can't.
Right.
And the foresight to having more VRAM is getting more and more apparent as games try to pack on as much as they can.
Right. Now, so you would say it's a good thing, right?
Oh, it's definitely
the cards taking over, ATI taking up ground, AMD taking up ground.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to keep NVIDIA honest with their pricing because at some point they started really gouging people for their stuff. You could pay so and so like $400 for a card.
660 Ti.
No,
it was like $350. You're $50 away from the $400
like
price.
$280, but like yeah, it's
still shocking.
660 Ti stands separately amongst that because it punched way above its weight class.
It was a 680 board basically.
670, I thought.
Well, 670 board is basically a 680 board. So anyways, we're getting off track.
Whatever the case is, AMD is doing really good with what they're doing with Radeon Group. I hope they can pull the same thing off with Zen. The Radeon cards are kicking ass. And they have had their issues that they should have foreseen, and Bergs will talk about that. But they're able to take care of it quickly. Okay.
Yeah,
whatever.
We have to talk about it. We're a tech channel. We have to talk about it. PCI Gate. That's what everyone's calling it.
I thought it was Power Gate.
PCI, E-Gate, Power Gate, whatever. Power Gate sounds like a cool home automation system. Like you come home and you just your gate to your backyard opens up. So we're gonna call it PCI Gate. So when you're designing a card from the ground up, and this is AMD's word, this is a ground up manufacturing design. When you design something from the ground up, you know what your total wattage draw is going to be. I don't care what you say, you know this. And you probably assume, we're going to offset that by using the actual PCI leads like every card in existence. So that's a fair assumption, right? Now the problem with that is they screwed up. And what's the max wattage draw on, or max wattage on a PCI?
From the slot?
From a slot.
I think it was pulling up to 90 watts off a 75 watt slot.
I thought it was 135 was the peak they saw when they tested it. It was up there. We'll pull up the graph, but it was above this manufacturer standard, which we'll get into with the next topic. But it was above the standard for what PCI is supposed to be. You're only allowed to pull so much power. Now, there have been confirmed reports of people killing their Sabertooth boards, killing their Hero, their Maximus boards, all these different things.
The good boards.
The good boards, not like the cheapy bottom of the barrel like ASRock.
Those are the boards that were supposed to handle extra power running through them.
Right, that you can overclock and the VRMs will take it. These boards are designed to be stable.
A lot of people said that the scare really only applies to cheap boards that don't have good traces or good lines through it and all that stuff. But apparently, I guess not. I didn't know about those failures. He did. So,
and I love that card. Our friend Rusty built a machine with an i3 and a 480.
RX 480 reference.
And that thing, he brought it to the LAN party. That thing screams for what it is and the amount of money he spent. That's a great gaming rig, and I really like the card, especially for the price point. $299 for 8 gigs, right?
No, $239.
$239 for 8 gigs.
Yeah.
Jesus, that's such a steal. You play Fallout 4 with the new expansions and everything, all the graphics turned all the way up with 4K texture packs. You never have a problem.
He can play Siege with the Ultra HD texture pack. I can't.
Yeah, he never has an issue. Yeah, we can't. Yeah, we're stuck. So, I mean, the core clocks are one thing, but having the additional VRAM is a whole different thing. And at that price, it's a killer card.
Yeah, and it'll make the card last longer. And Siege proved that with my brother and my other friend.
So. It's just a thought, though, is having too much power through the PCI is something they should have foreseen. Had they done maybe a little bit more extensive testing and not rushed. And we know they rushed to get it out because people who are buying 4 gig cards actually got 8 gig cards that they just slapped the sticker on.
Yeah,
we know that they rushed to get it to market. This is something that we for sure know. So I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, they came to market with a killer product, and they knew it, but they could have foreseen these issues with more testing.
Yeah,
and would have saved people a $200 motherboard. I mean, AMD, I've heard, is taking care of all the people though. So
that's good.
Yeah, you can't fault them. They knew it was a mistake. They patched it with the driver and firmware. No big deal. So good on them. Our next topic we're going to talk about, which goes with graphics cards, is PCIe 4.0.
Yes, PCIe 4.0. I saw a little bit about that, and I'm pretty excited for it. Not that graphics cards can really saturate the PCIe bus yet. I believe the 2.0 spec was saturated with like a Radeon 295 dual GPU card.
Yep.
So it takes a lot to really saturate the bus.
I mean, we've got people running right now with PCI 3.0 3-way Titans, and you're not saturating the bus.
Yeah.
For crying out loud. You want to talk about bandwidth? Holy crap.
So the advantage here is going forward, what can PCIe 4.0 bring that's going to be mind-blowing? And it's 300 watt power limit.
That's huge.
Yeah, that's huge.
Because what does your card draw? What do the 970s draw? 175? 200?
Yeah, right around
somewhere around there, depending on your clock and everything like that.
Yep.
So you could run all of that in theory through the board.
Yeah, you wouldn't even need your ugly power cables if they're ugly like mine, not like his.
I was going to say, don't call them ugly. They're gorgeous.
So the advantage here is the PCIe 4.0 design is also speccing for external cabling. If you could run an external cable that has your PCI lanes and power onto it, guess what? External GPUs are back in the game in a much simpler way. You don't have to deal with Thunderbolt or anything like that. It's much more doable, and it's not some sort of hacked up way to get it to work. Right. Even though these guys that are coming out, Razer for example, or the Power Color Devil Box, or the Asus ROG X2, I think is what it's called. They're it's a custom box, but make no mistake about it, it's got adapters to have Thunderbolt go over PCIe then back to Thunderbolt.
Right.
Within it, and you can do that homemade. I've done my research on that as well. If you really wanted to, you can build your own box. It's just nothing is seamless.
And every box back now, everything has to have a large power supply.
Yeah,
and that's the thing with PCIe 4.0, you shouldn't need a power supply.
Your own power supply would push it.
Right, your own power supply pushing through the dedicated connector on a board should push.
But the other thing that people have been talking about with that is, how are you going to push 300 watts through motherboard traces? And really, it's like you're not gonna have 300 watts being pulled out of the main 24 pin, going all the way across the motherboard into the PCIe 4.0 slot.
You're going to get a similar setup to like you have for your socket.
Yeah, you're gonna instead of plugging a power lead into the GPU, you're gonna be plugging a power lead into the motherboard right near the slot, most likely.
And the cool thing about that, and this doesn't really apply so much to a build without sleeved cables, but if you go so far as to sleeve all of your cables, you no longer need to worry, in theory, about running a 6-pin or a 6-pin and an 8-pin or 2 6-pins. Once you've sleeved it, you plug it into the board, all your power is going to go through the slot. So it really doesn't matter. Once you've sleeved it, none of this, I got a new card, I have to change this, right? And that's what I had to do, and I'll tell you, dude, it sucks. Like taking all your sleeving off something you've already done and re-sleeving it, it's not fun.
They got to leave the power leads on the boards though, because they got to be backwards compatible still. So
right?
They can't just take them off.
No. They will. Then they will. But that's the thing is, once you have them sleeved and you have your build looking just so right, you have it all perfect. You never need to worry about it again, assuming PCIe 4.0 carries forward.
Yeah, it lives up to that. It's still speculation at this point.
Yeah, the speculation is 300 watt minimum, 500 watt maximum. So you could run a Titan X Pascal core.
We're talking about power draw. If you want to run power draw, you run an AMD card.
Well, true, but we're brute force.
Yeah.
We're talking brute force for this part, but you could run the latest iteration of the Titan XP, is what they call it, because Pascal.
Yeah, Pascal.
You could run that thing on there and never have a problem. It does. It's a way above what the power threshold on the slot is.
Speaking of the power lead being on the motherboard, I actually had a motherboard that had a Molex power right on it for that exact function to give additional power to SLI configuration. So that does exist already. It's out there, and it's probably going to come back.
So it's weird that we're kind of going backwards, because the old school cards, like we've upgraded my mom's machine and made her a little media box running Kodai, however you want to say it. And her old card was a 7600 GT or 7800 GT, no dedicated power, and it was a Fatality edition. No dedicated power, pulled it all through the PCI slot. So it's weird that we're going back to that.
Yeah.
It
Makes
is
sense.
weird. It's like a cycle here. We go dedicated power, non-dedicated power. So it's interesting.
Computing is fun, but that's why we're here, and that's why we're talking about this stuff.
So I think our next topic we're going to go to is we're going to talk about Android Nougat, and then we're going to talk about the PlayStation Now and then the Xbox stuff. We'll wrap it
Okay,
up in a
sure.
nice gaming setup for
Sure.
portable.
I'm more of the Android guy versus this guy.
Wait, it's in my pocket.
What you got?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sorry. I freaking love my iPhone. It always works for me, and I never have to worry about anything.
Mine does too.
The way he said it, mine does too.
That was because I've had Android phones that have their own issues, but
Your new phone though, from your Xperia, has been a much better experience, correct?
my Xperia only started giving me issues after the Lollipop update for it.
Okay.
It was great on KitKat, but Lollipop, Sony, this is the problem with Android, and it really isn't an issue with the operating system itself. It's the issue with it being somewhat open.
Yeah.
And a manufacturer gets their hands on it and they want to make their own spin on it. Well,
They should stop that, by the way. Stop it. Samsung, HTC, I'm looking at you. Stop it. Just stop.
but here's the thing too, that they put their own stuff on it, and that causes problems.
Yeah.
When you want to just run vanilla and it's going to run the best, and everybody knows it.
Yeah.
But they still want to put their own spin on it because they want their own features in order to lock you into their ecosystem. Apple knows all about that.
Yes, they do. But this also goes hand in hand with Internet Explorer by itself is a decent browser. It's when you have 1,000 add-on toolbars, like the people we've seen in our tech days, when you open up IE and you have this much viewable window with this much screen space because it's all full of toolbars.
That's why Microsoft Edge doesn't let you do that
Thank
sorts
you.
of stuff.
Thank you. But that's the same thing with Android. By itself, the Android OS and its bare bones vanilla is fantastic.
Yeah.
It's when the manufacturers put their other crap in it, it becomes a problem.
See, but here's where Android 7.0 Nougat is trying to shine. And to me, it wasn't a huge difference versus what I already have.
You updated yours, correct?
No, it's on Marshmallow still, but
Okay.
being on a customized
ROM.
no, just a customized layout, whatever the
UI?
you want to call it, Sam. UI, there's touch.
Let's go with UI.
Whatever the case is, Android, vanilla Android probably wouldn't be where it is now if it wasn't for those companies making their custom versions. Because what Nougat is doing is it's taking, and what Google has been doing with Android for a long time, is basically taking the ideas of these other companies that they say, oh, we want swipeable notifications, expandable notifications, and we want other features to.
They basically want to expand their notification center.
Yeah, so they're making all these improvements to the stock Android experience, and then Android in their next version says, hey, we like those improvements. We're going to integrate it into ours. Right. Essentially, that's what it looks like. Obviously, they're not going to come out and say that, but a lot of the features that you get in updated versions of vanilla Android are features that were already available in custom versions of older Android.
Right, and that's the beauty of having an open source OS in a sense. Like it's open source, but it's kind of not, right? Like it is and it isn't. Mm-hmm. Whereas the Apple stuff, they control the entire ecosystem from hardware to everything. So
this is what you get.
You have no say unless you jailbreak it.
Right, but most of the times this is what you get, and then eventually even Apple got the pull down notification shade that Android had from the very beginning.
And night mode with iOS 9, thankfully. That's something that Android users have had forever with Flux. That's something that if you use your phone all the time, and I know most people are addicted to their phones. I mean, tablets, phones, everything. You kind of want to have something that doesn't cause your eyes to bleed when you unlock your screen in the middle of the night because you get a notification.
You also want something that lasts a long time on battery, and the Doze feature with Android Nougat has been improved. Doze will help your phone last longer by turning off certain functions when it knows you're not using it. So the only way that Doze works in Marshmallows is when it knows that you're not touching it, it's not moving it, it's probably using accelerometer to know that.
No, dude, it's using the barometric pressure reader. It just knows you're not climbing a mountain, so it's like, I'm going to go to sleep right now.
Well, it's not raining right now.
Yeah, exactly. That's the cool thing.
But Nougat is smarter in how it uses Doze, and that it can actually work while it's in your pocket.
Right.
So it's supposedly
like if you're walking and it's in your pocket and it senses steps, it knows you're not going to check the phone while you're walking around. Typically.
Right. It's probably now working with the proximity sensor.
Right.
But I've already heard other versions of a customized Android experience that will use the proximity sensor to know it's in your pocket to turn off certain features.
Nice.
So again, it's just Android keeping itself current instead of letting the manufacturers run away with all the cool stuff. But Nougat itself, it's definitely an improvement. Should you be pushing for it incredibly hard because you're on a phone that has Marshmallow? No. most likely if you're on a phone that has Marshmallow, you're not on a Nexus phone.
Yeah.
You're on a customized phone that has its own UI, and you probably already have a lot of the nice features that it has. And my experience half the time has been if you get an update over the air to the next version of Android, you're going to be in for some trouble.
Now they did address that. They have said with Nougat that the over-the-air update is no longer like a 10-20 minute reboot.
They're going to make it better.
They've already confirmed this stuff. That like your over-the-air update shouldn't take forever and reboot, and then hopefully it comes back.
But a company like Samsung or HTC is not going to do it Google's way.
Oh no! If you have a Nexus phone, done deal.
For Nexus is great. That's the advantage of a Nexus phone in the sense that every advantage that an iPhone has, the Nexus phone is supposed to have similarly, as far as being smooth, being vanilla, being the way that that Google wants it to be.
And that's my big thing that I really did like when researching the topic is that the Android, the Nougat, now has night mode baked in. It has the brightness reduction. Not just a sensor for your lux to see what your brightness is in the room, but it also has a color temperature adjustment. So as you go, like later at night, you need to get some sleep. It actually adjusts the color temperature up to give you more of an amber light versus a blue light, because they've shown blue light keeps you up at night. That's why the LED setup I have on my desk when I go to sleep, I fire that bad boy on red. It doesn't strain my eyes. I go right to sleep. If I leave this thing on, I can't sleep.
I mean, how many of you look at your phone at night and then next thing you know, you lost an hour?
Oh yeah. No,
if you have the night mode active the right way and it starts, what did you say, phasing it in?
Yeah, it's got like a slow fade in. If it works the way that I think it should, it should do it. Now there is a trick to get it to work, because I've heard reports that people can't get it going. I'll post a link to the Reddit thread where a guy posted a fix for it. It's a little tricky. You have to download like the Google version of night mode. It's an actual app in their marketplace, but you download it, install it, and then once it's installed, like initializes in the OS, then you can delete it.
Yeah.
But it's a weird little thing, and I'm sure it'll get fixed, but we'll throw it in the description anyways, that way you guys can have it. So multi-window.
Multi-window in Android Nougat is baked in now, which means it's going to work with a lot more stuff. But multi-window has been around for a while if you had a Samsung Note or a phone from some other manufacturers. So it's another example of Google bringing in a third-party feature to make one of their own. It's just nice that it's going to be there, and that the way that it works with the recently used apps button, it's actually pretty intuitive. It looks kind of more like alt-tabbing on a computer as opposed to just trying to shuffle things around. So they're making it a little more intuitive, real nice. But in the end, if you're holding your breath for Android Nougat on your phone and you're not on a Nexus device, don't worry about it. As long as you're on Marshmallow, maybe even Lollipop.
Yep.
You really don't need to worry about it too much. It's nice. It's going to have some improvements, but your manufacturer should have taken a lot of what what it has and put it into what you're already using.
It's true. So now we're going to go into the non-PC gamer side of this tech.
Sort of.
It goes hand in hand with each company's vision of where their products are going to be used.
Yeah, so PlayStation Now was recently talked about, or recently brought into the PC realm. Mm-hmm. PlayStation Now being a streaming service where you can have access to hundreds of PS3 games. I think a limited selection of PS4 games right now.
I think they said 400 games total.
Well, yeah, but it's all PS3, I think, mostly. No,
no, God of War, I think I think they're trying to do a simultaneous launch. I could be wrong.
It's more limited for PS4 games, though.
Right.
At the moment.
Yeah, it's mostly a PS3 library.
Yeah, so it's really nice that they're going to do that. It's something, like $15 a month. I didn't get the pricing exactly. I think it's going to be around there, though.
You're basically paying for the license. Yeah. Essentially, it's like you're paying for the license to stream the game.
Yeah, you're streaming it on your computer. They're going to come out with the $25 Bluetooth dongle. They'll make connecting a DualShock 4 to your computer a lot easier as well.
But even then, if you don't own a PlayStation 4, buying a controller, what do the controllers retail for? Like $50?
Probably less.
Yeah, $40-$50 plus a receiver.
Yeah.
I mean, you can play PlayStation games on your PC without downloading emulators and any of that stuff.
Yeah, without going crazy with it. So it's really nice that they're doing this, especially when you have companies that make exclusive PlayStation games like Naughty Dog. Damn Naughty Dog. I wanted to play Last of Us on my computer, but they're not letting me do that.
And what did they make
Uncharted,
you feel?
really.
What did they make you feel? Sad, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Naughty Dog, you made them feel sad. You guys got to get with it, man.
There are games that on the PS4.
And Nick, if you're watching this, Nick, I know you work at Naughty Dog. Make it happen, dude.
Good luck. But they're not the only ones. I believe whoever made Beyond Two Souls
Yeah.
I want to see that on the computer as well, but no luck.
Yeah.
So it's nice that we'll be able to do that. Actually, it's a roundabout way. It's technically
Ratchet and Clank, dude. I'm excited for that one.
Did you see the movie?
No.
I haven't seen it either yet.
No. Anytime there's like a show or a game, oh, did you see the movie? No, I'm not going to watch Fanorama. As much as I'm a Futurama fan, I'm not. That looks terrifying. I don't know if you've seen that. It looks terrifying.
Yeah.
It looks like a really, really, really bad like porn parody.
Well,
But
that's
so
what
far,
Jopie said. Jopie's the one who said it looks like a porn parody.
it like when I watch it, this is like Zoidberg peeping out of the trash can, like when you watch the trailer. Holy God! It just anyways.
Yeah. So whatever the case is, Ratchet and Clank,
God of War. I'm excited to do God of War though.
Shadow of the Colossus.
Oh yeah, I love that game.
Yeah,
love that game.
So there's a lot of games that it's going to be fun to dabble in that. And I believe you can get a 7-day free trial just to test it out and see how it works.
Now if only they let me use my Blu-ray drive to decode PlayStation games using PlayStation Go, and I can actually play PlayStation.
Well, see,
games.
Speaking of decoding, this is what I feel is kind of odd for the minimum requirements to run PlayStation now: a 3.5 gigahertz processor.
Really?
You're streaming. Why do you need that?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, dude. That's a very good question.
Weird, kind of weird there.
So, what are your thoughts about the Windows Play Anywhere with Windows 10?
I really like Windows Play Anywhere. That is great, and they should have been doing that since the Games for Windows days.
Now, I'm scared. My brother-in-law, and I think you agree. I'm waiting to see concrete evidence, but it looks like I can't find any for sure confirmed like data on it. But I don't know if you need to have an Xbox One. The way I read it is you buy the game for an Xbox One, you own a Windows license.
Yeah, that's essentially
and that's the way it looks. And if that's the case, that's amazing, because then I could play Forza Horizon. I could play the new Forza Horizon. I could play the new Gears of War on my PC and not have to go spend $300 on a console that literally is going to sit 80% of the time because I do all of my stuff on here.
Right. But if it has to validate through your console, then...
Come on, Microsoft. If you do that...
I don't know that yet, though. So,
if you do that, you're alienating everyone that you've tried to make happy with the integration of the Xbox app and everything like that on Windows 10.
But then they're bringing keyboard and mouse support.
Oh, dogs knocked some stuff over. That was fun.
Then they're bringing keyboard and mouse support to the Xbox One.
What? Oh, they're going after a lizard. Okay, well...
Anyways.
That's entertaining. That's a live set. This is what you get.
Yeah. So keyboard and mouse support in the Xbox One, and to me, it's a long time coming.
Yep.
I know a lot of console players are going to probably cry like little babies. Some people get to do that.
But
I hope there's a game setting that lets you checkbox whether you can allow to play with those people or not, because that's all it needs.
Well, but to go with that, Xbox gamers now get keyboard and mouse support.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean...
How rad is that, dude? You no longer need that X360 adapter, dude. Like back in the
Zim360.
The Zim 360.
Yeah,
you no longer need that.
3, yeah.
You don't need that.
It just works.
It just works. Now, the interesting question is what kind of acceleration they're going to have, what DPI support. Does it pull the raw data from the mouse, or does the software on the Xbox, because you can no longer use your drivers, mind you, does it pull the raw sensor data? So if you have a 12,000 DPI or 24,000 DPI sensor, is it going to natively, instinctively do that, and you have to use the Xbox's adjustment? I would
say it has to pull it from the mouse, because most likely if you have a mouse like that, you have a little toggle on it to change your DPI.
But it's controlled by software.
No, I don't have any mouse software on mine, and it just a little light turns off and on, and it goes faster and faster. Yeah.
My Corsair, my Logitech, and my Razer, you all needed the software to adjust it.
Nope.
By default, those Razers, those sensors pulled at 1 kilohertz, or 1 millisecond response time, so whatever that works out to, and then you had to have the software to adjust the DPI. So if that's the case, could you imagine, like, you're all pumped, you got your Xbox, you plug your keyboard and mouse, and your keyboard works no problem, you're pulling your mouse, you're like, dude, this sensitivity's through the roof. Like, what do you do?
No, too much.
Like, I hope they're not gearing it towards, like, your people with the Dell, like, all-in-one, you buy it in a box computer, and you have a really low DPI mouse.
No, I'll just bring in my mouse and be like, hardware toggle, click, 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 okay, I'm good.
See,
that's AIO's a company. They're local guys. They're local too. So
the Corsair will do that now that I've done it on a PC, because it's now written to the controller on the mouse. Yeah. But same with the Logitech, does the same thing. But that is one of those things to kind of keep in the back of your mind.
Yeah. So we'll see how it all works out. Microsoft said a few months ago that it's not years away. It's not anything like it. It's a matter of months, and it's been months. So we'll see what happens.
What are your thoughts on Scorpio?
Scorpio is my idea of what Microsoft is doing to converge their systems. Scorpio is basically a steam machine. It's a powerful computer, and it's more like a computer than anything before it.
It's like a steam box.
A steam machine.
Steam machine, yeah, whatever they call it.
Yeah.
But you use an Xbox controller versus a Steam Link
and
or
it's,
their
and it's
controller,
Xbox OS or whatever they call it on there.
which is basically like Metro.
Yeah, so I believe it's kind of cool what they're doing with it, because then you're going to have different levels with the same games. Microsoft has said that this is probably going to be the last of console generations that we see, because they're most likely going to just do incremental upgrades to the console. So the
To where you're already at a PC.
You already have the game. You don't got to buy it again. You see that happening with PS3 and PS4 with Last of Us Remastered coming out, something like that.
Yep.
So where in this case you can you put your game in the new console and now it looks way better. So. Yeah, it's definitely something that is a step towards the future, to where we can finally get like maybe modular components in consoles.
I don't even want that. I just want consoles to eventually evolve into a home theater all-in-one system, a PC, basically. Like a home theater, a HTPC. Like that's what I want, because really this whole thing of like, oh, it's a remastered version of the game for 2K or 4K, I think that's bogus, because my Fallout 3... Or we'll go even farther back. Oblivion. I could put Oblivion on this rig tomorrow with, Shimmering Isles and all that stuff, and I can download 4K texture packs for absolutely free. And granted, you're still using the old models and the old mechanics, but I get updated texture packs.
Yeah, the game looks good.
And it looks amazing. I've seen the stuff for Oblivion, and I'm just like, holy crap, right? But with consoles, it's a closed environment, so you're not going to have Xbox, PlayStation, or Microsoft, Sony. You're not going to have them wanting to give away content. Same with the developers. They're not going to necessarily want to give away content for 4K, 2K.
But they're going to take that out of the developers' hands by making a console stronger to just automatically do that.
Right, and that's great, but it's like, I don't want to have to pay another $50 for the re-release.
Right,
that's the fear.
Exactly.
I do worry about that.
You're going to have this higher powered console, and you buy the game, and if Windows Play Anywhere works out, that's what it is, right? Play Anywhere,
now,
then you have
anniversary update is something that's necessary for that.
Whatever.
Anniversary update.
It's a Windows update. Who cares? Service Pack 1.
Yeah, Service Pack 1. People have said, don't do it. It'll break your machine. I did it on this, and it's fine. And there's no problems.
There's no big deal with it. So it's kind of cool that then you have the Scorpio, you have PS4's competitor to the Scorpio coming out, PS4, PlayStation Now, the Windows Play Anywhere.
It's getting so close.
Everything is starting to kind of come back to these guys in a way. They want to get the PC gamers in, or the PC gamers who used to be console gamers, or who are both, don't have to deal with such a separate ecosystem as much.
Oh, did you see Vulkan API is also built into NuGet?
Yes, I was thinking about that.
Yeah, so Doom and a lot of games use Vulkan.
Of, computer games and APIs and all that.
Yeah.
If you are a gamer on Android device,
mobile
then
platform.
Ouya! Vulkan is going to be nice, and Vulkan on a PC is incredible.
Yeah,
it's great that it's going to be agnostic to the cards, even though it's mostly an AMD thing. But the company behind it is making it work for everyone.
Yep.
So it's good for everyone. DX12, Vulkan,
Vulkan runs so much.
That's the future. DX12 is great and all, but it'll get there. But Vulkan is just already been there.
Vulkan's money. It's money.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and that's another kind of thing with convergence, in a sense that consoles have been great because of optimization and being able to be able to program closer to the metal, and that's what Vulkan is doing for computers.
Yep.
So you have a RX 470 in our friend Joey's computer, our coalition member Jopie. And he's running Doom Ultra, 120 hertz monitor with FreeSync and everything, with the 470, an RX 470, at getting hundreds of frames per second with that. That's impressive.
Someone needs a power steering belt. Holy cow.
The belt's slipping. Yeah. So that's really impressive, because here I am with my 970 feeling a little down now hearing stuff like that.
But this all goes back to the convergence, though, because you're getting computer hardware that for the price of building a good computer, like a gaming machine, that if all you're going to do is gaming, you're not going to do audio creation, rendering like I do, and all you do is gaming, you can build a stellar computer for what maybe the Scorpio is going to come out. My guess for Scorpio is going to be $599 to $699.
That was my guess, $600.
Yeah, it's going to be around there. It's going to be real close. So it's like, for that price, you and I, anybody, go to PC Part Picker and just start putting together stuff. It'll tell you if you have any compatibility issues. But really, you could build a gaming PC that gives you more functionality than an Xbox or PlayStation, than a console, for around the same money, and it's going to scream.
And AMD is trying to make sure that, especially if Zen gets priced properly, because they're already doing it pretty smartly with the Radeon cards. So,
I mean, could you imagine something that competes with like my machine? or your machine, like a 3770 2700K, with a card, with a processor that competes, and you're only out like $600.
Yeah, these are $1,300 systems in terms of how much the hardware cost when it came out.
Not including that water cooling.
Yeah, not including the cooling stuff. This is just factoring air cooling and for
just
half
the board
that cost,
components. Yeah,
half that cost, AMD could be in the game for building something that will run games just as well.
Yeah. Yeah, we're at a pass here where we're going to see kind of what goes on in the future. But we're going to.
It's exciting what's happening with tech right now.
And we're going to be doing more tech talks. If you guys like the video, feel free to subscribe, leave a comment.
Yeah.
Sorry for the background noise. It's a live set. There's nothing we can do.
As I explained earlier.
Yeah.
It happens. But it's nice. It's a really nice patio out here.
Subscribe to my channel, Homebrewed Hero. Also, we're here doing this kind of as a collaboration between the Coalition Games.
Coalition Gaming Crew.
Coalition Gaming Crew,
yes,
that's it.
I mean, it's a coalition. It's in the name that we're going to collaborate.
It's all of us. So we're going to do one here, and then next time we do it, we'll throw it on that channel, and we'll just, kind of have a symbiotic relationship and share comments and do this and that. So
if you're a fan of Homebrewed Hero, come check us out. And you Coalition members, make sure you go check him out.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you around.